You're not Millie. Where is she this week? So, she's having a week off, is she? And you're taking her place? Okay then. Welcome to Why with Sly in the Loft. You want to know why I'm in the loft? Well, this is where we spend most of our time. And if you look at those other videos on the website of Kidlington Baptist Church, you'll see that Rue and Stu have got their shed. So we came up with our own special location. Well, my question for this week is, why was Jesus found guilty? Well, after what Millie told me last week, I read ahead in the Bible again. The men who arrested Jesus took him to the home of the high priest, who was the most important religious leader of them all. The religious leaders held a trial, but it wasn't a fair trial. There was no judge and jury or people who promised to tell the truth. Instead, it was a crooked trial, and the only people asked to speak were the ones who were willing to tell lies about Jesus. But they couldn't keep their story straight, which often happens when people lie. Well, Jesus did speak up for himself. He said, for 3 years I've been teaching about God, teaching about his kingdom, teaching out in the open area where everyone could hear what I had to say. I have nothing to hide. Why don't you question some of the people who actually listen to me? I know, he made a good point, didn't he? So, why was Jesus found guilty? Well, as you ask, I'll tell you what happened. One of the religious leaders stepped forward and smacked Jesus in the face. Then he said, that's no way to talk to us. The high priest is in charge. He'll decide what happens here. The high priest turned to Jesus and said, we have suspected this all along, but we want to hear it from you. You think that you're the Messiah, don't you? The special one that God has promised to send us, the very Son of God. Yeah, Jesus did reply. He said, that is exactly who I am. I am the Messiah. I am the Son of God. And one day I will be in heaven sitting next to God himself. What's the Messiah? I had to look this up. The Messiah was the person that the people were hoping would rescue or liberate them from the Roman occupation. Well, of course the high priest was furious. He said that he didn't need any further witnesses because Jesus himself said that he was God's own son. According to their law, anyone who thought that must die. And now the religious leaders had a reason to put an end to Jesus. So they beat him, made fun of him, and locked him up for the night. In the morning, they planned to kill him, and all their dreams would finally come true. I know. Based on what we just heard, why was Jesus found guilty? Yeah, and that's also a good point. The religious leaders didn't have the authority to kill Jesus. Because the country was under the rule of the Romans, the religious leaders would have to take Jesus to the Roman governor. And they had to do it quickly. So they took Jesus to the government, a man called Pilate, early the next morning. What happened? Well, the religious leaders told Pilate that Jesus was dangerous, that he told the people not to pay their taxes, that he said he was a king. Pilate asked Jesus if this was true. Jesus said he was a king, but not the kind that Pilate was thinking of. So, next, Pilate said that he saw no reason to put Jesus to death, which made the religious leaders really angry. And then there was another twist. Pilate's wife had crept into the room and whispered in his ear that she had a dream about Jesus, just as she pointed to him. She said that he'd done nothing wrong, and that Pilate must have nothing to do with it. I know. Everything was starting to look up for Jesus, but why was he found guilty still? Pilate didn't know what to do. He thought that Jesus wasn't guilty, but he also wanted to keep the religious leaders happy. And then he had an idea. Every year at Passover time, Pilate let the people choose one prisoner that he would then set free. And it was Passover time now. Well, as you ask, there was a particularly nasty prisoner named Barabbas who was a thief and a murderer. Pilate would let the people choose between Jesus and this Barabbas. He thought that they would choose to set Jesus free. But when the religious leaders saw what Pilate was up to, they ran out among the crowds and told them to shout for Barabbas. The people didn't know what was going on, so they just did what the religious leaders told them. "Release Barabbas!" they cried. "Release Barabbas!" The religious leaders told Pilate that if he released Barabbas, then he would have to kill Jesus. And they said that if he didn't kill Jesus, then they would tell Caesar that he had failed to do his duty and failed to keep the peace.
Bah.
Yeah, I know. Pilate just wanted peace. So he decided that if the death of one man would make that happen, then it was a price he was willing to pay. But before he gave the order, Pilate did one last thing.
Bah.
What did he do? He called for a bowl of water and a towel. As he plunged his hands into the bowl, he said that he was washing his hands of the whole business. Then the religious leaders cheered and the soldiers dragged Jesus away.
Bah.
So why was Jesus found guilty? I guess it was because the religious leaders were worried that the people would realize that they were not behaving how God wanted them to. And Pilate was worried of getting into trouble with Caesar. And Millie told me this was all about part of God's plan, that Jesus would have to die to save each one of us.
Bah.
Well, I've had enough of talking to you, so I'm going to go and see if I can find where Millie has hidden my Easter eggs.
Bah. So, Barnabas, what was that all about?
Oh, I don't know, Barbara. I don't speak human.